Sir, Maruti Suzuki last year announced that they will not be bringing out diesel vehicles. So, and post that, a lot of companies have actually said that diesels are over. Renault has also taken that stand with no diesels in their portfolio. So, what is your thoughts on diesel as a fuel for the common man? Is it over, or are we looking at a petrol or an alternative fuel future in India?
See, I think, Sid, at the end of the day, it's all about economics. When some of the players came and said that, see, we are not going to produce diesel vehicles, it was simply because the segment in which they operate, in that particular segment, the difference between a petrol and a diesel vehicle was becoming so high that the consumers would not have invested in buying a diesel vehicle. So at the end of the day, I think economics teaches us a lot of things. So because of BS6, the kind of technology changes which are happening in the engine, and the technology changes which are happening in the entire way the flue gases are being treated, the exhaust gases are being treated, and some of the technology changes which also happen in the fuel tank area. So that is the reason why we find that there is a certain increase when it comes to diesel vehicles as compared to petrol vehicles. Of course, prices go up in both the categories. The price increase in diesel is higher than the price increase which is in petrol. But what happens is that in vehicles which are smaller or medium size, the percentage increase appears to be higher in diesel as compared to petrol. In case of larger vehicles, there is an increase, but percentage increase is comparatively lesser. So that is the reason why, from an economics perspective, it makes sense for people to still continue to buy probably a diesel vehicle in the higher end rather than maybe at the entry level of the cars.
So companies, big OEMs are trying to run lean. They are trying to conserve cash. So do you think during this period of lockdown and uncertainty with COVID-19, this is the time companies should step up their marketing, or should take it a little slow?
So of course the companies should step up in terms of their visibility, I would say. Now there is a very sweet spot that we have also realized at this point in time. The reason is because in the COVID times, we have found that the entire demand of digitization, even from a consumer perspective, has gone up, and the customers are also getting hooked onto social media platforms more than often. We are finding that the customers are also spending more and more time on internet. Consumption of data has significantly gone up. So step up doesn't necessarily mean spending more. Step up means improving their visibility in the market. And most of the companies are also looking at how do they increase, hence their spend on digital marketing rather than marketing necessarily through print or electronic media, or marketing through doing road shows and so on. So if you would have realized that there are no road shows or some things which are happening over the last 3 months any which ways because of lockdown. And people have been very, very innovative. Now, maybe TikTok is not the right word to be used in today's scenario, but I don't know if you caught it or not. We had one of the major brands, or not one, but a couple of major brands in China, which launched their new cars also using this particular app. So something equivalent is what some of the players in India can think of, that can they launch their new products more innovatively and at a lower and a frugal manner, but improve visibility. I would say improve visibility, definitely.
So now about electric vehicles. Now everybody seems to be talking about electric vehicles, but there are two things which I think come to my mind. One is customer education. Like I myself, being an auto journalist, I've driven one or two electric cars. And when I drove an electric car for the first time, it was a very good experience. And similarly, for my friends who have never driven an electric car but they know about it, I think customer education is a key point. And then, sir, skill development. I think any mechanic can work on a ICE engine, petrol or diesel, but working on an electric vehicle, that's a totally different ball game. So where are we with skill development, and what is the industry's focus on consumer education towards living with an electric vehicle?
I'm very glad, Sid, that you asked a very relevant point, because sometimes they miss out about the fear of unknown that the consumers have. I think they understand the ICE engines very well. There is a certain degree of comfort that people have. but they don't have the same degree of comfort when it comes to an electric vehicle. I remember, as you rightly said, that when you drove, I drove the first electric car in 2015, 2016, sometime around about that time. And the first time when I sat inside the electric car, the first thing that struck me is it was completely silent from inside. When I sat and I pressed the button and the car kind of got on, just some lights started blinking inside. When I asked the person who was sitting beside me, I said that, can I go now? And the lady said, yes, the car is on. You can drive. You can just press the accelerator. And I thought that, see, that was the aha moment that we have never felt inside an ICE engine, because we are so used to that sound, we are so used to that vibration, and companies spend dollars and dollars together to try and address the NVH problem, as it is called, the noise, vibration, heat problem, as it is called. But in an electric vehicle, I don't find enough players coming and talking about the comfort that a passenger gets inside or the consumer gets inside, where he really gets that comfort because it is so silent inside. It is not having any vibrations inside. So we need to talk and also market, I think, some of these features of an electric car more. I think we also need to educate and build infrastructure. So it's not just about educating our customers or consumers around electric vehicles, but it's also supporting them by building the right infrastructure, because their concerns are largely around. So price is one element, but apart from the price, their concern is largely from a range perspective, and second is from a perspective of accessibility to charging points. So if companies can address these two issues, I think it will be phenomenal. We went and did a survey. We spoke to a lot of customers and so on. Customers were saying that as long as I can get a vehicle which gives me about, say, 250, 300 kilometers range in electric, I'm good with it. Even if it takes 6 hours for charging, I'm fine with it, because I can drive it over the week, and over the weekend I can park and then I can get my vehicle charged. But I need to get a reliability that the vehicle will drive for about 300 kilometers on one full charge. So that's what the customers are looking at. And from a price perspective, the customer said that even if it is expensive by about 10 or 15%, that 15% is also good with me if I can get a similar equivalent electric car, which is 15% expensive than the ICE. And they are also thirdly worried about the return or the resale value, the residual value of the car. So if companies can get some of their act right around this, I think it is definitely possible. From a second part that you asked around skill, I think it's not a big challenge as such. The reason is firstly because these vehicles don't require too much of maintenance. They require comparatively lesser maintenance. And building that skill, India has done phenomenal job in so many other sectors. So I don't think so that it will be a big challenge in terms of building skill when it comes to electric vehicle maintenance. But the more important part is, I think, focusing on the consumer who's going to consume this vehicle and address his concerns.
So now, from the learnings from the SARS outbreak back in the day, personal mobility has taken preference over shared mobility because of social distancing and the disease being infectious.
Yeah.
So, sir, what kind of trends do you foresee in the future now?
See, I think that you are right that at least in the next 1 to 2 years' time, till we find a proper solution to the current pandemic that we have at hand, people are going to be more concerned when it comes to shared mobility or when it comes even to public transportation. So when we went and we did a lot of surveys even during the last 8-10 weeks or 12 weeks now, and we have been constantly reaching out to the consumers through digital platforms. Almost 70% of the people have said that they would limit the use of shared mobility and public transportation. That's a significantly large number. Now, what it means is that people are going to look at hence personal mobility as a second option, which means that there could be some pent-up demand when it comes to smaller cars, because there could be a need for functional vehicles more than vehicles which provide me a lot of luxury and a lot of high-end features. People may look at low cost but functional vehicles which meet their needs of personal mobility. This is also the time that we could see the rise in demand of used cars, because people who may not be able to, say, afford or buy a new car at this point in time at the entry level may also look for probably a option of looking at a used car at this point in time. So that's the second subsegment that could see some demand going up. And the third is, of course, two-wheelers, because that also serves as an alternate to shared mobility and public transportation. So that's the reason why I feel that some of these subsegments may end up doing not all that bad, while overall there could be a reduction in demand when it comes to automotive, whether it is passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles. But some of these subsegments, entry or smaller cars, used cars, and the mass two-wheelers which are there. So these are some of the players who may find that there is a pent-up demand that they could serve in this time.
One of the impact of COVID is, minimum human intervention. As a result, AI, automation, robotics comes into play. So going forward, do we see these global OEMs as well as Indian OEMs automating their manufacturing facilities? If yes, if you can talk a little bit about that and all, and will jobs be eliminated in the process, if I may ask that?
I think most of the manufacturers are definitely looking at accelerating their digitization of manufacturing, I would say. And when we think of manufacturing, we don't have to necessarily think of a person standing and producing something on the machine. There are many elements to it. When the material comes at the entry gate of the factory, how do I automate material receipt, for example? How do I ensure that the incoming inspection or quality inspection, which is being done at the various stages, get automated? So people are looking at various kinds of solutions for automating their entire manufacturing process, but they are being cautious because this is also the time that they don't have a large revenue stream which is getting generated, and hence they are particular in terms of low cost automation wherever possible. So that is how people are trying to prioritize. There is also another challenge that they are trying to address. Most of the manufacturers believe that they may not be allowed to get more than 30% or 40% of the workforce even by November or December. So some of these restrictions will continue, and they do believe that the demand is likely to go up post-October, November. So how are they going to produce at a higher output or at the same output, say, as the pre-COVID, but with only 30% or 40% of the people coming inside the plant? And that's the reason why they are looking at automation as well. Coming to the second part, Avishek, that you had in terms of job creation / risk of losing jobs and so on, I will never forget one of the things that I remember in my lifetime or in my childhood days, I would say. In the 1980s, late 1980s, early 1990s, there was a big drive on computerization of railways. And I remember in the 1985-1986 time, there was a huge strike across the entire ticketing system in the railways because people were resisting getting computerization of their ticketing centers. People were used to making all the tickets by hand, getting those old ticket stamps from the ticket counters and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of resistance, but at that point in time, we drove still computerization across the entire country. Now, if you see about that period, that is the period where you saw the rise of a lot of technology companies, IT companies in the country. So it led eventually to the creation of the TCS and the Infosys, the Wipros, the HCLs in the country. Now, today, we may feel very proud about that entire movement that we went through. I think that same is the case when it comes to digitization of some of these jobs. So let's embrace digitization. I don't think so that anything which helps in improving productivity can be pushed by any one of us. The best thing that we can do is anything which makes us more efficient, anything that makes us more productive. Embrace it, develop new skills, develop or retrain our people, because that is the way forward for us, and maybe we will be able to create the same name when it comes to smart manufacturing or when it comes to Industry 4.0. Globally, we will be able to create the same place for ourselves, just like we have created on the IT side. So that's what I think we should look for.
Sir, what according to you is the way forward for the Indian auto industry, considering the current situation and considering the big setback or pushback from the BS6 migration?
We should realize a few things, that while the government did push the auto industry towards BS6 or equivalent of Euro 6 norms and so on and so forth, we do talk of increasing our portfolio around exports. Now, most of the developing or developed nations are already at Euro 6 or even inching towards Euro 7. So we could not have been stagnant and moving at our own pace and still having the aspiration to become a large, dominant, export-oriented sector. So I think in hindsight, it is good that we did bite the bullet. Yes, it was a tough bullet to bite. The timing perspective, movement to BS6 has got coincided with COVID, but there was nothing that one could forecast this or could do crystal glazing and say that no, this is not the right time. So maybe it's just the timing that we are moving into BS6 and COVID is hitting us at the same time. But it is definitely a right move from a technology perspective. Going ahead, I think that the Indian players, as I said earlier as well, I think that we have to try and find out the niche opportunities for ourselves. Some of the niches will happen by the new business models which are emerging in the market. I think the entrepreneurial mind that we have, a large startup ecosystem that we have in the country, these startups are already piloting out with various kinds of new business models already. We probably are the fourth or the fifth largest when it comes to the startup community, so we should feel proud about that. Now, if the OEMs can look at some of these startups and then say that, okay, we would like to also reinvent ourselves and ensure that we also start playing in the automotive sector differently, become a player looking at either connected or shared mobility and try and say how we can try and do things differently. Let me give an example. We have, for example, Uberization of passenger vehicles, which happened way back, almost a decade back in 2010, 2012. Maybe in India, we started seeing Uberization from 2013, 2014 or 2015 onwards. But when is the Uberization of freight movement going to happen? Now, isn't this the right time for some of the players in the country? We are the third largest or the fourth largest CV player globally. Isn't this probably the right time to think of Uberization? So I'm saying that let's not think only along the product lines. I'm saying that yes, we will continue to think about new products and so on, but also let's think about new emerging business models. And that is where I think getting technology along with automotive as a sector, as a convergence, are the sweet spots that some of the players should start to work upon and should start to say, how can I create a new opportunity when none exists today? And that's the white space that we should try and address as a industry together. So that's from an OEM perspective, I would say. From a tier one perspective, I think that they also have to start looking at how can they become technology leaders rather than being converters. Now, some of them have actually broken the shackle and they have already become large technology players. For example, all of us, when we speak about Bharat Forge, for example, then we always speak about how Bharat Forge has brought a lot of technology into the forging technology that they operate in. But that is the path I think that a lot of other tier one companies also need to take. That rather than thinking of themselves as only someone who is converting a raw material into finished goods, can we add more value from a technology perspective? So those are some of the plays I think that some of the players need to think about more seriously.